We have a big event coming up next Saturday, week from Saturday. We have 225 book bags that we've got to put school supplies in. We have 40 bicycles we got to load onto a trailer. We have our pizza man coming with homemade ice cream. And we got 225 hamburgers we got to pick up. So if you guys would like to volunteer, we need some assistance in that. We're meeting at, is that Martin Luther King? Do I have that right? Martin Luther King Park. Okay, and we're going to have a trailer with loudspeakers, and the city of Lima is supplying that so we can talk to the kids, and we're going to talk to them before anything is done. We're going to have a ministry time with them. We're expecting between 200 and 300 kids. And I told Derek Glenn, I said, no advertising. He said, if we advertise, we'll have 1,000. I said, no, we're not ready for that. So we'll keep it down and we'll learn from this. Are we learning from it every time? We got something we fine tune and learn from it every time. And that's what life is. That's how you work. That's how you play. That's how you raise families. That's how you do everything. You constantly are improving, but you're constantly going to the manual and finding out what it has to say. You got to always be in that so that your mind is getting renewed to ideas, to concepts, to what God has to say about something, because he has all the answers. I don't have it. You don't have it, but you can get it. It's available. That's what's so awesome about it. We're talking about the relationship of the body with the head. Jesus clearly has established in Ephesians chapter 1, and he put all things under his feet. How many things? Does that leave anything out? Well, how about that problem you're having with the neighbor? How about that problem you're having at work? How about that problem with the government? How about the problem with the people that are being unkind, or people that are stealing, killing, destroying? He said, I put all things under my feet. You're the body, it has to be under your feet. Well, how in the world does this work? That's the great tragedy. That's the great tragedy. Because my people are destroyed because they don't know. And they should. That's the great tragedy. You've all been there. Every one of you. Some of you are still there somewhat. Some of you are working your way through it. But if you come into this class, you're either going to do it or you won't come, because I'll press it until either you get angry or you start learning. One way or the other, I'm not going to let you stand neutral. I won't let you stand still. That's not my nature. I've never been that person in my whole life. I don't know if that's a talent I have or if it's the problem I have. But I've just never been that way. And those that you know me, and those that you have worked with me and been close to me, you know that's who I am. And that's what my responsibility is here. To press you till Christ is conformed in you. That's the hope of glory. You know, I was sharing with somebody this week, and I've taught about it from time to time, and I've talked about the difference in hope and the difference in faith. You know there's a difference? Now abideth. Why would he say that if there wasn't a difference? But what is the difference? This is the tragedy. The church has no idea. As a general rule, when I say something, I'm not saying 100%. I would never do that. Any more than I would say I'm 100% right. Now, in my head, I think I am, because if I wasn't, then I will humble myself and I will change. I know my nature. But until I know that, I stay right there. And I watched it work, and I watched it succeed. I watched it get accomplished. And I know it was God because I was trusting in him to make it work. And it was scary, and it was frightening, and I don't know how in the world it ever got done. But I was doing that. I was trusting him. I would step out in faith with the hope that I would win. And love is the greatest, because faith works by love. That's the tragedy. Not understanding it. So how does this happen? How do we get ourselves in a place where we don't understand faith, hope working on the faith, and love binding it together for manifestation of victory? How is it we don't understand that? I would have to say, of all the people I've ever known in my life, all of them have believed God for something. But the tragedy is, I know very few, very, 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 very few who've ever seen the manifestation of their faith, hoping and believing and walking in love till it comes. So why is it that the body and the head are always disconnected? Why is it so oftentimes those aren't working together? And I say it's because of the light and momentary afflictions that you experience in life. Because we think that the light momentary afflictions are permanent. We can't see the future. That's your hope. You give up on your hope. You stop looking for it in the future. It's going to be in the future. You understand? It ain't going to come the minute you got it in your head. It's going to come when you understand faith and you understand the working of hope and you understand how love binds it together. and they manifest. We talk, we run our mouths, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. This is going to go this way, that's going to go that way. And we're going to do it this way, and we're going to go here, and we're going to do this. And you just keep killing yourself. You keep pulling your gun out and shooting yourself in the foot. You've got to quit talking about things and do it. That's what I do. I hope you guys are seeing that. What do you think this stuff we're doing in Lima? We're just kind of like wasting our time? We're working on something. Do you understand what we're working on? The thing I told you about 3 years ago. We're going to see this town turn upside down for Jesus. This is just a bite. This is just a step. I know it's going to take time. I know it's going to take an effort. We have to walk in faith. We have to have hope. And we never get out of walking in love. That's exactly what the devil tries to do. Do you understand why you're always having a problem in life? Because the devil comes into your face and says, you don't like that guy. You shouldn't believe that. That'll never happen. You'll never get that. And he tries to get you to get discouraged, because the minute you're discouraged, you're not walking in love. I know you've never seen it that way, but the minute you're discouraged, you're not in love anymore. Because you don't believe that God is love and that He is involved with that thing you're into. Can you give up? That's discouragement. And that's not in love. And so therefore your faith and hope won't work. We can't see the future. This is not faith. And to get to a place where we believe He'll never answer His word to us, and we give up. If I can say I see strength in you gentlemen, it's you gentlemen that made a decision they're going to stand. And after you've done all you can do, you stand a little more. And you stand a little more. But don't you understand? They say, I'm dying of cancer. I really don't care what they say. I don't run my life around they. And I made that stand once. And I was dying of cancer. But I refused to admit that. And nobody even knew it. Not even my wife. The lumps were so big and so many, the pain was excruciating. I couldn't even sit on my tractor. Bouncing on my tractor was too painful. It was tearing me up. And I said, you know what, God? I don't care. You guys hear me say I don't care about a lot of things. And I don't care about a lot of things. I don't give a flip about what the devil does, because I've come to the conclusion he's the thief that comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And if something is happening in your life that relates to those three, it's not from God. But that's the tragedy. Because the church thinks it is. They're confused. Black is white and white is black. Green is red and orange is purple. They can't get their act together on what is it exactly this thing in my life, what's going on. So they end up going to the world and looking to the world for all their help. And we make certain people in the world filthy rich because we live in fear. If fear is present, faith is not. They won't coincide. They won't live together. Demons won't live with your spirit. Do you understand? Because He won't allow him in. So don't think you're demon possessed if you're born again. I don't care if you don't have it all together. The devil can't get in. He can get into your head, but he can't get into your spirit. Do you understand? And there's a huge difference. And it ain't him in your head anyways. He's convincing you to think wrong. He's convincing you to do it. He can't do anything to you, but he can convince you to do it. He has no power. This is what Ephesians chapter 1 is saying. And he put all things under his feet and gave him to be the head over all things to the church. That's you. All things, which is his body. The fullness of him who fills all in all. That's who he is. And it's where you are. But if you disconnect from the head, you will connect to some other head. You can't live stagnant. You can't live in neutral. The two spiritual forces will never let it happen. I don't care how good it looks. I don't care how much money you think you got. I don't care how much success you're having. I don't care how much depression you got or discouragement or defeat. You cannot live static. You're going to be running one way or you're going to be running the other. You see how the world gets there? They've been running the wrong way for so long, they're really deep. Now we got a government that's so infiltrated with demonic spirits. Do you think that most of the government officials understand what I'm talking about here? Do you think they understand spiritual forces, spiritual warfare, spiritual battle? And I'm saying God has equipped you, has given you all the tools, all the power, all the victory, all the weapons, all the defensive weapons. He's given you everything. And he put it in his body. It's in his body. And he says, I just want you to use it I will tell you how. That's what the head does. Tells your body where to go. If your brain wasn't working, you wouldn't be sitting in that chair. You'd be laying at home somewhere or in a hospital or whatever. You'd just be laying there. That's it. Because if your brain ain't working, your body's going nowhere. So how is it the church is going nowhere? They're the body and they're not listening to the head. That body is sick. That body's just laying there. It can't move, can't go nowhere. When your brain's out, you're out. When your head's going, you're done. Faith is the substance. It's the substance of things hoped for. It's the substance. What is a substance? What does that mean? Wouldn't you think it'd be a good idea to know? Or do we just read it? Oh yeah, faith is a substance. How many times you heard that quoted? Do they really know what they're quoting? They don't know what they're quoting. That's why God called me 8 years ago to start writing Businessman's Perspective. This is what he said to me. I don't think I've ever told you. You know how a mother of an animal, or even our own mothers, they take food and they chop it all up, and what do they do with it? They chop it all up and they puree it. Why are they doing that? The mother? So they can feed it to their baby. Because unless it's dissected, unless it's crushed and it's made palatable, The baby can't handle it. And the Lord said to me, remember how I talked to you down there at Miami University 35, 40 years ago? I said, yeah. He said, son, if you don't know what those words mean, you'll never pass the class. You read those books and you read chapters and you don't have a clue what you just read. And you think it's just because you're stupid. Because I'm thinking, man, I must be dumber than a box of rocks. I don't have a clue what I just read. I just took 2 hours to read that whole chapter and I have no idea what I just read. And I went to the Lord about it. He said, how are you supposed to know what you read if you don't know what the words mean? I said, now that's the most sense I've heard in a long while. I wasn't getting it from the professors. So I'd read. Do you know how much annoying that is to have to read and stop because you don't know what a word means? So you take the time to look it up in the dictionary and you read it and study it. Then you read a little bit more and maybe three words later you have to stop again. That's annoying. But I went from an F to an A. And all I did was stop, find out what the word means, and now all of a sudden the paragraph makes sense. And then the paragraph makes sense. 2 paragraphs together begin to form something. And next thing you know, you got the chapter down. And the Lord said, I want you to do that same thing. I want you to dissect that word. And I want you to make it palatable for the babies. Now you know how I've got what I got. That's how I did what I did when I wrote Businessman's Perspective. And I write it 5 days a week. That takes a lot of my life to look the word up. I look it up in the Webster Dictionary, 1828. Taken off the King James Version. Then I take the Greek and I take the Hebrew and I write in there some of the things that are there and I try and give you how many ways that's translated in the Bible, which means you could almost take every one of those words and put it into that sentence, and sometimes it starts changing it. Then I give you my opinion. But the most important thing to me is I give you scriptures, and I give you the Greek, and I give you the Hebrew, and I give you a definition, and I give you a concept, something to look at. In just a few little moments of time, things can start making sense to you. That's how I do it. Faith is a substance of things hoped for. Faith is the evidence of things not seen. You're believing for something? You're believing for a great business, a great marriage? Something that people will look at and say, that's God. That's God. It's inside every one of you. And I'm going to get it out. That's my confession of faith. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm going to get it out of every one of you. I don't care how old you are. I'm seeing changes in some of you guys. It just boggles the mind. I'm just doing what God said. Nothing special about me. Faith is a substance. So how does substance play out? What does that mean? See, a lot of people think faith is the end thing. That's the end thing. If you're believing for a bicycle, it's the bicycle. That's not faith. When you got the bicycle, there's no faith at all. There's no faith there at all. Everything I've ever believed God for, and all of a sudden the manifestation comes, I'm no longer in faith. It's over. It's time for testimony. It's time to teach. It's time to tell people. Not running your mouth before you see it. After the manifestation comes, it's time to talk about it. It's time to be bold as a lion. Time to tell the truth. Because it's the truth that'll set them free. I'll come back to that in just a second. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 4 in the Living Bible says, and the one who so wonderfully comforts and strengthens us in our hardships and trials. And why does he do this? So that when others are troubled, needing our sympathy and encouragement, we can pass on to them the same help and comfort God has given us. Why is it for you to have manifestation so important? Well, just you, your wife, your 2 kids, and you 4 and no more? It's important that you have a manifestation so that you can be an encouragement to someone else. That's what 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 4 says. Hardship and struggle is not there to knock you down. It's there to make you strong and build your character so that when you stand in front of somebody else that's going through what you went through, you can encourage them and you can strengthen them and you can build them up and you can tell them it's going to work. It's okay. You give them hope. Faith is a substance of things hoped for. That's what you give them by your manifestation. Substance. In building a house is what? Materials. Concrete. Nails. Tarp paper. Studs. Floor joist. But here's the tragedy. Most people think that faith is the house. And they are deceived. So they're waiting for it. It don't come, they quit. You get it? They think it's the house. And it's just the building material. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. What are you hoping for? The house. The house is your hope. You know how it's defined? By a blueprint. The blueprint is your hope. You look at it. Faith is the substance. It's just the materials laying out in the yard or laying in the lumber yard. But people think faith is the house, and it's not. And therefore, they don't think about it in terms of you got to take your faith and you got to take your hope and you got to put your hands to it. Do you understand why God said, I bless the work of your hands? They think they sit around the house all day. I'm believing for a house, and they think that's the faith. And when the house comes, that's the manifestation. What are you doing to get there? They're not doing anything to get there. They're just, so I'm believing. And they think that's faith. Well, faith is nothing but substance. That's all. When you hear all that talk on the television or radio, and that preacher, he's talking about, oh, you're walking in faith, you know, he's talking about the manifestation. But it's not the manifestation. It's just a part of the thing that you're hoping for. Your hope is your blueprint. Your building materials is your substance. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's not the manifestation. And what you're hoping for is just what you see on the blueprint. It's your guidelines. It's your direction. You got to have it. I had a friend down at Miami University where I went to school. And he and I were really close. He was an all-state quarterback at Columbus Sales. And Roji, the guy that you guys all know, we were all three very close friends. And one day Mike decided he's going to break out. So he got into drugs. And I thought he was pretty wacko. Smart guy. He had so much talent. Whew. He was gifted. He'd been an amazing lawyer. Whew. He's just smart. He's good. Got into drugs. And I spent a lot of time in his little farmhouse out there. Had no running water. Had no bathroom. Just 4 walls on a farm out in Oxford. That's out in Oxford. And I go out and visit him from time to time. And one day, it's all wooded, walking back through the field, going back into the woods. He said, let's go for a walk. I said, okay. And we're walking along, and he looks me in the eye, and he says, I really understand. I said, you understand? He said, I understand. So, well, what do you understand? I mean, I'm really confused. He said, I understand. So I asked him again. I don't know what you're asking me or saying to me. He said, I understand where you're at. Because both of us are broke. Didn't have 2 nickels rubbed together. And I took $3,500, which is all the money I had, to go to college. And we bought a piece of land together. We were going to build a house. We're 19 years old. But he's really getting into this drug world. And I said, man, I don't understand. And now I'm starting to get a little mad. I'm starting to get angry. Because I don't know what he's talking about. And he kept communicating, and I began to realize. He said, I know where you're at, Steve. I know where you're coming from. Just tell me you did it, and I'll forgive you right here, right now. Now we're back in the woods, in a field, and I'm starting to look for a 2x4. I don't have any idea what he's got going on his head. But it sounds to me like somebody stole something from him. And I said, well, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. You are making no sense to me. He said, just admit it, man, and it all goes away. I'll forget it, because I know you. I know the struggles you're having. I know what you're going to do. And we took my $3,500 to buy the land, not his. And I said, you're crazy. I said, what kind of things you got going on in your head? He said, I've almost killed 3 people that knew where my drugs were. And you're the only one left. I said, I don't have any idea where your drugs are. You never shared it with me. And he said, well, you had to know. I said, I have no idea. And I'm beginning to think something's going to go down here. So I start preparing myself. I'm starting to look for something I can grab a hold of. I was a pretty strong guy. He was a fighter. He told me some of the stories of some of his fighting, growing up in that part of Chicago or Columbus. And he'd take guys twice his size and he'd just put them to their knees. Just something his father taught him. Dad was a factory worker, taught him how to fight. And he went to a Catholic school, private Catholic school. Columbus de Sales is a private Catholic school and still in existence as far as I know. I see their name every now and then. So I don't know what's going on. And I just looked him in the eye and I said, you're crazy, man. These drugs have drove you nuts. You don't know who your friends are. You don't know what to believe. You're really confused. And I'm thinking he's going to tear into me any minute because I'm not being very nice to him. And he never tried anything. I was waiting. Nothing. And he looked at me and he said, I don't want to be in business with you. We're done. I said, not a problem, man. Not a problem. Drugs is a terrible thing. You know where the voice of the drugs come from? It comes from demons. The voice of drugs comes from demons. We got a whole group of leaders in this country that are drugged. They're listening to the voice of demons. You know what their drugs are? The love of money and power. They're the worst kind of drug because it doesn't incapacitate your body. You understand? Where real drugs will break your body down and eventually you'll physically have a problem and you can't go. But when you have a problem with the drugs of power and the love of money, the most dangerous 2 forces in the universe. And the demons know that, and they know how addictive we are to it. And they watch America. We go on strike, we fuss, we fight, we're not content. On and on and on, all the violations of the Bible. We justify, must be okay. Not a big deal. We got things called pork belly projects where congressmen put money in their pocket. They're addicted to the demon of lust and power. Mike and I had a moment of time where it was over. And we no longer seen each other. And I thought I'd never see my money. And by golly, he brought me that $3,500. About a month later, driving around in his new Porsche, flying jets to Arizona and back, doing the drug thing. You know what Mike does today? I haven't seen him. I got to be pretty successful in my home building business in 1980. That was 8 years after we had that incident in his woods. And the Spirit of the Lord said to me, I just had an absolute miracle happen to me when I became debt-free. I moved into my home by faith and by hope. And it was paid for. I was 29 years old, 1980. I just started believing when I was 26. I didn't go into business till I was 27. 3 short years, I'm debt-free. Total miracle. And some of you know a little bit about it. But the Spirit of the Lord said to me, I want you to get in your car. I had a new car. Had a new car paid for, had a brand new home paid for. 2,200 square feet with a 3-car garage, 100% paid for. And I was broke 3 years earlier. Never had a job. Never had all the things that people look to. I have no idea how God did it. But I can give you the principles. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. Faith is the evidence of things not seen. I had that blueprint in my heart. And out of the heart comes all the issues of life. I drove my car down to Oxford, Ohio. I had no idea what he was doing, where it was at. And he had been knocked down on this drug thing. And he took that piece of ground that we were going to build a house on, and he built a building on it to live in. It was probably 24 by 24. And it was the biggest disaster I have ever seen in my life. I have never seen anything so screwed up as this building he built. And he wanted me to stay all night. He was so happy to see me. And I looked him in the eye and I said, Mike, I was the only man that loved you 8 years ago. I wouldn't have done one single thing to hurt you. And I'm here now because I'm riding on high, and I have no reason to lie to you because you owe me nothing. You mean nothing to me. You're as low on my totem pole as a man can get. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not concerned about you. I'm simply telling you, I loved you, and I still do. He broke down, and he said, I know. That's the truth. And he said, my head was so screwed up. I didn't know who I was, what I was, or where I was going. But he did. He was driving a brand new Porsche, looking good. Had the prettiest girl on campus. And that house was a piece of crap. He had no blueprint. He just had a little bit of substance. And he screwed it all up. Because he didn't have any hope. He had some faith, but he had no hope. And the hope is your blueprint. It keeps you going. It's where you get your vision, your dream. Lima, Ohio is my hope. I don't know how. I don't even know why God chose me. That's what I wanted to do as much as I wanted to get bit by a bag of rattlesnakes. I no more wanted to stay in this town than a Lone Ranger without a horse. But God gave me a scripture in 1983. And he built my hope. I had to exercise the faith. But he gave me hope. He gave me an idea. He gave me a concept. 40 years ago. And we're just now starting to see some things happen. Because I had to wait till all the other men that were supposed to do that job had their shot at it. Do you understand? You guys all know many of them. And they're gone. But now we're here. We're here. We spent some time in the cave of Adullam. David waited 17 years after he was crowned king by Samuel, living in a cave, collecting people to be king because he never gave up his faith. His substance was the cave and the people that came in and the armor and the iron that he took and he made weapons. He never quit. He didn't just throw it all away. Well, this will never work. I guess I'm just going to go live on a boat. I'll be a fisherman all my life. Never did that. He kept his faith up and he had his hope. He had a dream of being the king. And he was going to kick the giants out. He's going to take them out. The land was filled with giants, guys. It wasn't Goliath and his three brothers. They were just three of them that David had to conquer to get the armies of Israel to have some courage, to have some faith, and to have some hope. They didn't have any. They lost their hope, man. When fear sets in, hope is gone. Do you understand? We're going to have some challenges, but we're not going to lose. You know why we're not going to lose? Why are we not going to lose? Because God said so. Love never fails, and we're not going to get out of love. You understand? There's people who tried to get me out of love, but I'm not going to go there. It's what makes your faith and your hope work. Now abideth these three: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Why? Because it makes the other two work. I learned this building of the house. I learned the building materials in 1979. This is when God was teaching me this. He said, you go get yourself some substance and you get a blueprint put together. And then you go put those two together. If you're talking about what you're believing for, you're bragging. There ain't no love in that. There's no love in that. You're just bragging. You know what you're doing? You're trying to get your blessing before it's time. And it always turns to worms. Every time. That hope and that dream, we call it hope. That's between you and God. That ain't about me. It ain't about your friends. You keep your mouth shut. Don't give the devil place, because he'll take it and he'll wrap it around your neck and beat the crap out of you. 1978. I found out my wife was pregnant with my daughter. I confessed over that baby in the womb every day. Did I say every day? You know why you can't believe my words? Because you don't believe God's word. When I say every day, I mean every day. I know you're never going to believe my words if you don't even believe God's word. Do you understand? If you don't believe God's word, you ain't going to believe anybody else's word. You're always going to find a reason why it doesn't work, because that's how the devil plays. And he keeps working you, till you're 90 years old and you're gone. That's what most people are. That's a tragedy. It's a tragedy to have a man stand up here and say, there's a book written about you. And God has a plan for your life. And it's in that book. You need to find out what it is and walk out of here and not blow it off. That's a tragedy. You're responsible to know what's in that book about you. There's a book written about every aborted baby. We've killed senators and congressmen and billionaires. We've killed every kind of a person you can imagine. Because there's a book written about that person. And God wrote it because he wanted you to have a future and a hope. Something big. It's a tragedy that the church is full of people that are in the habit of going there. That's a tragedy. It's called a familiar spirit. It's demonic. They're just going. Because they always have gone. You know folks like that? I know one thing. There ain't nobody here that way. When you guys come here, you guys are looking for something. Because I don't allow you to have that luxury. Because when you walk out of here, you're going to walk out holding your rear end because you've been kicked in the rear end about 14 times. And nobody is going, you're not that glutton of for punishment, boys. I know that. So when you walk in that door, you know. That's why so many have not come back. And the Lord told me that. He said, don't worry about it, son. I'm not making you responsible for those people. They're a problem going somewhere to happen. And guess what? It's going to happen. They're not an island. They're not independently wealthy. They're not wise enough. And we know that isn't even the answer. Man's wisdom and wealth, they're tools. They don't establish whether or not you've arrived. And that's what most people do with wealth. And that's what most people do with wisdom. Whether you're a college professor that think you have all the answers because you got a doctor's degree, or whether you're a wealthy businessman or a wealthy person that's inherited money, or you just make a lot of money in whatever it is you're doing. When you have it, it doesn't mean you've arrived. When you have it, it means you got more responsibility in the kingdom. If you're not in the kingdom, you're going to hell, and it doesn't make any difference what you do. The Bible says you can give your money, you can give your body to be burned. But if you don't have love, you're a noisy gong and a clanging cymbal, and you're going to fall and fail and have more problems than cars that got pills, thinking that you're doing it all right. But you're not doing it in love. That's why faith, hope, and love is so important. Well, I just got my introduction done. Hebrews 12:3 says, think of all the hostility God endured from sinful people. Then you won't become weary and give up. Think of all the things those people went through. And it's okay that you go through them, because the purpose is, why does he go through something that's different than him? Because he's got something in his life he needs, and he's got something in his life he needs, and they're going to both be different. And God allows those things, doesn't bring them, but he allows them to build them up in that area, to strengthen them in that area. So every time, how many times you heard somebody say, "That always happens to me"? Never heard that? Every time I try something, it fails. It just never fails. It never fails. It just doesn't work. If they just had a little knowledge and a little wisdom, they'd realize that those things are there because there's something weak in their life, something missing, and God's trying to fill in that void. He's trying to fix it. That's why I said, thank God for the trials. Why? Makes you strong. And your trial's going to be different than the next guy. And maybe that trial, because I've gone to God before, I said, man, God, I've faced some trials I've never heard anybody go through. How'd you like to wait 10 years and sit on 5 condominiums back here and pay all the bills? Property taxes costed me somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 a year. How much is that times 10? Yeah, I got a brain. I don't get it. God says it's okay. You just keep going, son. Just keep learning. I said, man, God, surely somewhere along the line you give me a little relief. You know what he did? He doubled my property tax. Boy, thanks. Be careful what you ask for. I've sat on houses for 10 years. I built 15 condominiums back here and didn't have one of them sold. Did the whole development. Didn't have one of them sold. You know what God tells me? Go build another one. What? You got to be kidding me. Yeah, but this time don't build a Cape Cod, build a ranch. I said, God, the whole development and all the sewer and water and storm and the streets and everything's in for Cape Cods. He said, I'll help you with that. So it took me a year to design and redesign and fix. Banks have already told me, forget it, you're done. We sent you out to Phoenix because that's where we collect all the money from people like you. That was good news. Doesn't that make you excited about getting up in the morning and going to work? They shut you off. And the Lord's saying, build another house. It's like, man, this thing. How are we going to do this? I can see I'm going to spend another hour at home today. That's how I did it. I got into the Word. And when the devil fooled me with it, by faith, I knew it was the devil. But if you don't believe that, you're never going to go nowhere. You've got to know who your enemy is. You got to know who is that's talking to you about your failure, about not going to make it work. It's not going to happen. It's going to fall in around your ears. You're never going to get there. You're never going to make it. It's going to be a failure all your life. You're never going to amount to anything. You got to know that that doesn't come from your intellect. That comes from your enemy. That's different. You got to know that. You got to believe that. When everything around you looks like sinking sand, you got to say, no, I'm going to win. How are you going to do that? Money gained little by little makes it grow. I don't even have little. So I scraped together $300-400, and this is going to buy me my substance, my building materials, and my labor. I get in the blueprint put together, so I did what I could. And I just started. There was zero logic. Zero possibility this was going to work. But I just started. And I just kept working at it. And I kept building. I kept working at it. I kept building. I kept going. Bam! One of the 15 sold. Guess where I got my cash? I didn't see it, because faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Did you hear me say not seen? See, everybody's running around, well, I'll believe it as soon as I see it. Well, that's not faith. That's ignorance. Why is it the church is in the tragedy of not understanding a single thing about walking in faith? But they all talk about it. And they know nothing about it. Don't have a clue. You can't even get them to define it. And I just did. Real simple. It's the substance of what you're hoping for. It's your evidence of what you can't see. Within 6 months, all 3 of those condos got built and they were all sold. Easy to talk about, isn't it? Isn't that a wonderful story? That Doyle, he sure can tell some wonderful stories. Aren't those wonderful stories? Isn't that wonderful? Do you have any idea what I was going through? When I couldn't see it, I couldn't experience it, I couldn't touch it. I had no idea. But God, I trusted. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Does that say something? Don't lean to your understanding. I didn't understand. So I said I trust in it. In all your ways, act on His knowledge. And He will direct your past. Don't get it from your buddies. He will do it. You know, there's a lot of responsibility in the kingdom of God when you get knowledge and wisdom and understanding. Do you have any idea what I got going on in my mind? I got these people coming here saying they're Christians and they're no more Christian than my drywall. I probably told you about the one guy came in here, salesman, goes to the Methodist church over in Delphus. So you Christian? Yeah, I'm Christian. I've been Christian most of my life. I said, yeah. I said, when did you get born again? He said, well, I'm not one of those. And we wonder why the church is in trouble. We wonder why the politics are in trouble. It's simple. The church doesn't have any idea what they're doing. They just go into church. And they call it a building. Over there, that building over there, that's our church. Oh, that's church? Yeah, that's our church. Got a sign out front. That's what they think. No understanding of faith. No understanding of hope. No understanding of walking in faith. Do you know what this country could do if we got about 1 million of us? Or 10 million of us? All stepping out in faith? Do you know what it'd be like? You got 1 million believers getting on their knees every morning and really, truly praying in all sincerity. Or 10 million? That's how this city's going to be won. I've had a vision of all of us on our knees in the center of the square, praying all day. Do I want to do that? Do I want to give bicycles away? It isn't my idea. God told me, he said, you go, son, and I'll take care of it. I'll finance it. I said, okay. 3 years ago. And we're doing it. We've seen some pretty cool things, haven't we? But we're not done. We're barely getting started. You know, we didn't get those corns out of the ground, did we? But we got this corn out of the ground. We're seeing little sprouts come out. And we're excited about seeing how many ears of corn are going to be on each stalk. You know, I had 2 ears of corn on each stalk of my cornfield. 2. You know how many kernels of corn was on each one of them? Each. I'm bringing them in. I'm going to drill a hole right over there, right above my hammer, and I'm going to put them right there. Because that's experience God gave me 10 years ago, riding my horse on the farm. 750. That's 1,500 seeds from one. I didn't ask for that. He just said, go over there and pull those corn pieces off the stalk. Okay. You know, I'm trying to walk in faith out there, and I rode over there and I pulled them off. He said, now shuck them things. So I shucked them. He said, now take a moment and count them. Tell me how many seeds are in each one. Now that's what you need to believe me for. I said, whoa. That's a little different than 30, 60, and 100, isn't it? So God told me, he said, well, that's just peanuts. What do you believe? I had that experience with God, so it's as real to me as that book is. It's the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. But I'm going to. I don't even know what that means. Did he tell you to trust in the Lord with all your heart and don't lean to your understanding? Did he tell you to do that? I don't know what that means. I don't know what's the magnitude of that. I'm going to experience it because I'm not going to stop believing. See, I'm saying these things to you guys to encourage you. I know you don't understand it. You haven't had the experiences I had. Now, some of you are starting to get into it a little bit. But I'm going to just keep telling you. Keep believing. You can hear all the songs and yada, 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 but it's got to get into your heart. And you got to let it work there and stay there. For out of the heart comes all the issues of life. You got to let it stay there and keep it working. And whatever that thing is you're believing for, that's just one of the steps on your pathway. That isn't the end of it. It's not the end of it. See why I talk about retirement stuff? That's the end of it. We're done. And a time when they got their ultimate wisdom in life, they got their ultimate comfort, they got their ultimate needs met. That's the time to be blown up, not setting down. And the church drank the Kool-Aid. Every one of you has talked about it. The day I retire. I mean, I've heard. And it just irks me. Because you got so much you've learned by that time that you are a gift that God could use. But you go dormant. You go down to the old elephant boneyard and die. That was in an old Tarzan movie, by the way. All the elephants went through this one spot just to die. So it was full of ivory and tusks and bones. God wants us to be about the Father's business. Is he your father? You better find out what the business is. Or you just become a statistic. Heavenly Father, I praise you and thank you for this word. I'm so thankful. You are so merciful. You are so gracious. You're gracious to your church. You're gracious to all those that are hungering and thirsting for righteousness, hungering and thirsting to walk in faith by love. You're gracious. You're kind. You're all-knowing. You're all-powerful. If we'll just let go. Just let go. Open the eyes of our understanding, Father, that we will be filled with the hope of your glory, the faith that passes all understanding. The power that's in your sword, that's in your full armor, that you've asked us to put on so we can do battle and we can conquer cities and do exploits in your name. We give you praise and thanks for that, Father. For it is Christ in us, the hope of glory.